Hello, 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 hello. It's good to see you. Say hello.
Welcome to the Huskies Hockey Podcast. Andrew and Weldie here. Last couple shows of the season as the Frozen Four gets underway later this week. As Thursday is when all the festivities start down in St. Paul. Big show coming up. We got our nominees for the Herbies to celebrate the best and the brightest of St. Cloud State Huskies has to offer. Fans can vote. How it works, you'll get one vote. Andrew and I will both get a vote. And if there is a tie, we don't know what's going to happen. We'll just draw something out of a hat for the winner or something like that. I don't know. But incredibly scientific here. But it's going to be, we got some good nominees, some empty slots too. We're going to discuss actually just right on air what goes where and kind of shore up everything. So I'm excited for the Herbies. How are you feeling about today's field?
I'm really looking forward to it as well. I just dropped off my tuxedo at the dry cleaners.
There you go.
It's a rental, but I've had it for 25 years.
You just keep renting it. Did they go out of business and just therefore
wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Gotcha.
But I always get classed up for the Herbies. It's the classiest thing that we do.
That's saying something.
That's right. So something. I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I think this year we'll have we've got a good crop of nominees. I think.
Exactly. And now that we've followed the women a little bit more, women as well, we're going to get them some nominations, and everyone's going to be kind of lumped into one. And there's a good case for really all the nominees. And again, we have some open slots that we're still going to discuss. So, because let's just say moment of the year is a little bit thin considering how the season ended for both squads, but. Because I was thinking, like, what moment of the year, even goal of the year last year. I mean, they were all late season goals.
No, because Ingram, which I think won it, his was early an October goal against Bemidji. I think that was the one that won, or no? Was goal of the year the Okabe goal in
the Okabe? Yeah,
was that moment of the year? See, we need a history of our own own creation.
Moment of the year was winning the Penrose.
That's right.
Or not Penrose.
Why do I feel like Ingram won that goal of the year? Maybe I'm just that in love with that goal. Maybe I voted for it. I don't remember, but yeah, well, not really the case this year because it was more of a challenge, and we always put a pin in that Molenaar goal against Miami early in the year, and I'm not sure if anything's going to beat it. But we've got some nominees. So
we got some nominees, so that's for sure. And we'll go through them a little bit later in the show. First off, though, we do have some news regarding two question marks that we had in regard to whether or not they were going to return. First off, Joe Molenaar takes his talents to the portal, hops in there, dips his toe in the water, and is going to play his fifth year somewhere else. I'm a little bit surprised by it, but also not really surprised. Like, he didn't seem like a guy that would have a lot of AHL offers, probably a couple ECHL offers. So, but I was just kind of thinking maybe if it's a scholarship type thing, just freeing up, and he's trying to see if he can latch on somebody else. But I don't know exactly what the story is there, but Molenaar is kind of an interesting kind of case, interesting guy. I really enjoyed, what he brought to the team, of what he was as a player. Probably as he was recruited, I expected maybe a little bit more goal scoring, but he turned into a very serviceable player in all sides of the ice. So, I wish him the best of luck going forward, wherever he ends up, as long as it's out of the NCHC.
Yeah, I agree. It was a bit of a surprise. If he was going to come back and play college and not go the pro route, as you mentioned, you'd figure that St. Cloud would have been the natural choice there. But so yeah, definitely a little surprising. And I mean, he kind of drove this offense for 3-4 weeks there last November when the team was starting to turn it around after their bad start. Yeah, not the most prolific player, point scorer, bit of a disappointment from that perspective, but you'd feel with the 5th-year guy, I mean, that he might have been my pick for captain for next year.
Yeah.
Because I believe he was an assistant captain. I think he wore a letter this year.
Yep.
Now I'm not sure who that goes to. Maybe Litke?
He's another. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
Another letter wearer. And I had speculated about Litke possibly in a Spencer Meyer situation, like perhaps Litke can have the C for multiple years if they put the C on him this year, this upcoming season. I think Anhorn's obviously gone. And who else wore a letter? Kupka? I feel like, or maybe Okabe. I feel like the other letter wearers are all gone. So it might be Litke by default. So, but if you're, like I said, if you're going to ask who I would thought that would have that inside track for that honor next year, it would have been Molenaar, but not to be. And like I said, best of luck. There's always that sliver of an opportunity if he doesn't find what he's looking for in the portal that he could return. But those things don't often happen in the transfer portal era, so he's likely going to be somewhere else. Yeah, I wonder where he ends up. I mean, he could go like a CCHA route and be like a top 6 guy. Perhaps that factored into the equation here. Perhaps he had a talk with coaching staff and perhaps they were open to welcome him back, but maybe not in a prime role where that might be doable at another program. I would doubt it's going to be an NCHC landing spot for him, but yeah, I'm going to think about it. Probably something like a CCHA, Atlantic Hockey, maybe somewhere where he can be kind of like a star of their team rather than more of a supporting character that he was here. But best of luck to him. And we're not done with him though. Hint, hint, because we've got some Molenaar action in the Herbie nominees. So
some hot Molenaar action coming up in the Herbies.
He might have an inside track for one of these. So it's not the last time you've heard of his name on this podcast, but it is kind of disappointing to see him go.
Yep. And the other shoe to drop was Alpha. Veeti Miettinen announced per his Instagram that thanking the Huskies and St. Cloud for 4 years, friends, memories, etc., and a collage of his achievements, him with the Pet and Rose, celebrating with teammates. Ends up with 118 points on his career and 0 penalty minutes, which is incredibly impressive in all sorts of everything, especially when you factor the randomness of hockey reffing in general, and also toss in the NCHC refs as well. So that's something I don't think is going to be topped, and kind of wish that he would come back for a 5th year, if not to try to go for what had to have been a record for 5 seasons of no penalty minutes. Something would not have been touched, but good luck to him wherever he goes. He hasn't announced, there's a sliver of a chance. I keep hoping he's not going to be in the portal, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to be the case. The fact that he hasn't signed with Toronto yet kind of makes me think he's going to go the free agent route and just wait for his rights to expire there before latching onto a team somewhere else that may have a little bit more opportunities for him at the pro level, or maybe just heads back to Europe, because I think actually that his style suits that game maybe a little bit more. But good luck to him, and we're not done with the Miettinens anyway, so right. We got Werner.
Yeah, I guess that was the surprising thing there, was we heard the goodbye portion, but we didn't get the other half of that. Excited to start phase 2, or starting the professional career. That part of the narrative, I guess we'll have to wait for. Usually those announcements come in tandem. But yeah, the fact that it's not, the Maple Leafs are not part of that story probably tells me that it's not going to be with them. Yeah, I would think that Europe's the better bet for him. But maybe he signs an AHL deal, finishes out the year this year, and hits the market next year, either staying in North America, professional hockey, or goes out to Europe, which might be my, like I said, odds-on favorite. But it was a good run for him. I feel like 100 plus points in his 4 years. That's a somewhat exclusive club. I mean, it's not like there's 5 players in that, but it takes a little bit to make that group in St. Cloud history.
20 players in Division 1 have reached that mark.
And I almost feel like I almost feel like I took him for granted, or I underrated him. The sheer point total, again, there's deficiencies in his game. But a guy like that, those offensive numbers, you can't scoff at that. And it's going to be something that St. Cloud's going to have to replace next year.
And that's kind of what I was going with next. I mean, obviously, the 2 big ones we have coming in for next year with Gavin Thorson and Austin Bernovic. But as far as forward goes, I mean, we've got 2 forwards now that just have been confirmed that we're going to need to replace. With Molenaar and Veeti gone, Okabe and Kupka obviously are out. So, I mean, that's going to be 2 other recruits that you're going to have to bring in, maybe a late recruit. Or obviously we got to start fishing in the portal for some forwards.
Yeah, so I mean, you got 4 of your top 5 scorers are gone now. The only one that's still here is Ingram, who we're assuming is coming back for a 3rd year. I mean, I don't think he's like 100% lock. I mean, drafted player. He's played 2 years. I certainly don't think he's ready for the pros quite yet. But you can't take that for granted these days. So you're looking at least 4 out of 5 your top scorers, which is kind of how things go in college hockey. Remember the last couple of years, early in the season when we're previewing opponents for the Huskies, and like Western Michigan's done this last couple of years, their top 5 scorers are all gone from last year. The ability to reload is more and more vital for teams to be a consistent contender like St. Cloud has been. This being a blip on the radar, not making the tournament, first time in a while that's happened. In order to stop the streak of not making the tournament into 2 seasons, you need to be able to replace this talent that you've lost. And as you mentioned, there's ways to do that. I'm really looking forward to Bernovic and Thorson. With the PTSD I got from Leah Gruba, I don't consider them sure bets until I see them in a uniform and they're on the ice wearing St. Cloud jerseys. So let's hope that those don't skitter away. But those would certainly be two big sources of offensive players that could replace those points that have departed. Plenty of guys in the portal. We think that Larson is active, at least in the conversation for players in the portal. We'll see how it all develops, but yeah, there's definite needs to replace. To say nothing too, last week you're all about, could you really use a defenseman as well?
Mm-hmm.
So there's possibilities at every position on roster, and it'll be interesting the next month, especially how we see the roster come into shape. But this was the first step of that, seeing what you're losing, because that dictates what you need to get to replace. And with the news of Miettinen's departure, and coupled with the others graduating players that we've mentioned, it's definitely important to keep an eye on these developments and all the moving and shaking going on in the portal. It's difficult, I think, to keep up with, but I don't know. I feel like Larson's going to be able to. This is his forte, I think. Not necessarily the transfer portal, but just roster construction, roster building, recruiting. His inroads with the junior program, I think, have paid off. It might really pay off if he's able to snag some of those type of guys who have junior experience that are available in the portal as well. We shall see, but I feel like we're in decent hands with Larson when it comes to recruiting and when it comes to transfer portal situations. But every year's different. So far this year, it's only been losses on the portal. We need to get some gains coming in as well to offset some of those losses, and we'll see how it all shakes out.
And that's also another thing when it comes to Molenaar that makes me think that it's, I don't know, like he clearly has an option to stay. I don't know, like on paper at least. So it kind of makes me think that maybe there was a talk with Brett Larson about it, and they maybe it's just kind of youth, wanting to get maybe a little bit younger, wash out all of the COVID, since that's going to be all done, maybe not have a 5th year, just go straight to the 4-year. I don't know. All we can do is speculate on it, but we'll kind of see what ends up happening and what Larson is able to kind of bring in from the portal, because I gotta imagine he's cooking up something.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, like I said, Molenaar is a loss, but let's put it in perspective. Veeti had 35 points the last 2 years. Molenaar had 31 points combined for his 4 years. And really, of that, it was really just like one good month where he wasn't.
That's true.
I mean, he had his moments. He scored in the Mankato game in the Frozen Four his freshman year. I think that was his only goal that year. I mean, he's had his moments, but I don't think we're exactly losing Gretzky in his prime here. But it was more the factor of just the experience, and I think the leadership that he brought to the table might have been more valuable than the actual point production. But I think that's replaceable as well. We'll see. We'll see how that all shakes out. But you never like to lose guys. But it's always a numbers game. And if it was a factor of, I know this isn't the equation, but if it's either Molenaar or Brnovik, like clearly I'm going to go with Brnovik. But I don't think that's the tit for tat necessarily. But there is politics that are involved here, and playing time and dynamics in the locker room between the coaches and the players, and between the players themselves. We're not privy to most of that, but if we can at least just get replacements coming in, we hear the news of that picking up. It'll really start pick up. I think the movement from the portal to landing spots, that will really take shape after the Frozen Four, because there's still guys on those Frozen Four teams that are going to go in the portal. So it will really pick up here, I would say, the week after the Frozen Four. And from that, for about 3 or 4 weeks, it'll be real busy.
Then how late does it go again? Mid-April?
I think the portal's
not
open
mid-April, mid-May, right?
I think that's when it closes. You got to be in by May 15th for undergrads. You can still be in the portal until, I think, July. I think you don't have to find a spot by May 15th. You at least just have to be in the portal by May 15th before it closes. So really, I think that's May 15th is probably a big date in terms of, by that time, I would say 75% of the action people in the portal will have found a spot by then. So really the next month will be the zaniest time in terms of portal action, and probably the zaniest time it'll ever be, because this year is the last year of the 5th year COVID players, and I think the action will die down a little next year. But so there's going to be a lot to keep you updated with, and we shall do our best in that mission.
anything around NCHC when you're looking at the portal? Anything kind of caught your eye? Obviously, I think we talked about last time about Colorado College, with so many people going in. Granted, they're all seniors, so the lack of graduate programs there probably had a lot to do with there.
I see 2 of those guys went to St. Thomas. I think they had 2 guys go from CC to St. Thomas last year as well. That Gleason was one of them, I know. Prokop, I think, too. I think it was Christie this year, and maybe Chase Foley.
Yep.
Decent players. There must be some connection. Got to go to one snooty private school in Colorado to a snooty private school in Minnesota. I don't know if there's a pipeline there, or maybe they just have the right graduate programs. That's one way to put it, right? What adjective would you use? Lunch pail, blue collar, working man?
No, that's another Ferris Bueller's Day Off when Ferris Bueller said he was Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago.
We already have one clip from Ferris Bueller on our button board. I don't know if we want to put another one on there.
We could just turn this all into a Ferris Bueller button board.
It could be.
Yeah, it could do that.
We've got summer podcasts coming up. We don't really have a ton to talk about on those pods.
Although on Saturday night, I watched Crazy Stupid Love with my wife, which is not something I've watched before.
I've never seen it.
It's pretty funny, but they did have a reference to 9 in there.
Really?
I was like, ooh, that would be like a good subversion from our usual 9 times.
They were clearly referencing Ferris Bueller.
I don't
in doing it.
Think so.
Okay,
but maybe. I guess I didn't think of it that time. I just thought the 9 was a coincidence, but I guess it could have been a reference.
Well, isolate that sound effect and add it to the button board.
Multiple 9 references.
Give it to Jason Bryant because he's still got some free time.
Right, exactly. So,
and we're loving.
By the way, Jason, later in the show, we've got Jason Bryant. First off, take the podcast off 1.75 speed because we got a serious question for you. We need a new sounder for the intro for the Herbies. The one we had last year only focused on men's hockey and was the first annual.
We need an evergreen one. One that we can put every year. Not one where it says the first annual for the 2022-2023 season. We need one that we can use every year. And you've come up with some good ones. So
we got some bangers from you. So if you want to go ahead and continue that would be wonderful. Okay, now you can go back to 1.75 speed. So we're good there. Obviously, North Dakota, the College of Revolving Goaltenders, went back and got the Arizona State goaltender. TJ, I cannot pronounce the last name.
Septenfelter.
Oh.
Who kind of had
as my dad would say, you do and you clean it up, is what he would say.
Well, maybe that's what North Dakota fans will say about TJ Septenfelter. Third college for him. He started as Devin Levi's backup in Northeastern. Then he skedaddled, went to Arizona State for the last 2 years. And, kind of a ho-hum season. I mean, 908 save percentage. Keep in mind the schedule they play, pretty weak. I think he's this like.
Oh, don't tell their Twitter account that.
Put that on the resume.
Put that on the resume. All their fans say you can't leave out a 20-win team, 25-win team.
Well, I mean, I would assume.
Sure can.
I don't know. Is this Hedquist sticking around? I mean, maybe Septenfelter doesn't exactly have this starting job on complete lockdown, but I would assume he's going to go in as the prohibitive starter for North Dakota next year. I put him more in the. I mean, they're all person too. These are kind of fairly average goaltenders, which might be better than if they were to have had a recruit that they would have been developing this whole time. I mean, if you're getting the 1 year with DeRitter was really bad, but either Driscoll or Person, the two goalies that they picked up and they made the tournament those years, those guys were fairly average. And I think Septon Filter kind of stays in that realm for them. It's probably better that they're not relying on Hedquist. But if you were to say that last year, like, well, at least you don't have Jacob Helston. Well, Helston arguably put up as good of a season for New Hampshire than Person put for North Dakota this year. So you never know what exactly you got if you're going to. You can only give one guy the starting job. You can only give one guy the bulk of the work in any given season. And so I'm assuming Septenfelder is going to be the guy for next year. And like the 4 years or the 3 years, I suppose, prior to this, I don't think it's going to be the answer to them winning a national title and them not being anxious about Brad Berry being their coach. But try again, rinse and repeat, see if it happens. Or if fourth time's the charm, we'll see if that's the case.
The rent-a-center for the portal for goalies for North Dakota. So, Miami also kind of saw a lot of people leaving, but it's Miami, so that kind of makes sense. But they did pick up, was it Christoph Filion from Quinnipiac? So I mean that seems like a pretty good get.
Did we mention Anthony Noreen, head coach, replacement for Chris Bergeron, USHL veteran, Tri-City, I believe is where he was at.
Where is Tri-City? What 3 cities is it?
I think the arena is Kearney, or is it pronounced Kearney, Nebraska? I don't know what the other. I think Hastings is one of the cities, actually. Hastings, Nebraska. I know that because Hastings, Minnesota is where I grew up, and Hastings, Nebraska is known for the birthplace of Kool-Aid. That.
Oh.
I don't know what the other city is, and I'm like 85% sure Hastings is another of those tri-cities, but I know the arena is in Kearney/Kearney, however you pronounce it. But he had a fairly decent run there. No, from what I can gather, no ties to Miami. It's not like he's an alum or anything like that.
Grand Island.
Okay, I have heard of that city. And is Hastings the other?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So I had 2 out of 3.
Hastings and Grand Island, which I guess it's like an Iceland, Greenland, Grand Island, like putting anything island for Nebraska. That's kind of part of the joke. There's no water in Nebraska.
Yeah, it's kind of like having Oceanside Arena here in Tempe,
right?
Arizona. I love those. Central to like western Nebraska, nothing around there. But had a fairly decent run there, and like I said, not familiar with Anthony Noreen before Miami hired him, but can't really do much worse than Bergeron in terms of wins and losses. Not to throw Bergeron under the bus, it was a tough situation for him to inherit, but that's kind of from Noreen's perspective. That gives you just, you're going to get 5 years of runway here. Like,
I was going to say, you got like 5 years of job security here.
Which is generally what it is for college hockey. You're going to get one round through your recruiting class, at least. And this is a team that won 1 game in conference last year. So as long as he doesn't go winless in conference, it's an improvement. So from the standpoint of 0 expectations,
one expectation.
The only direction to go is
one expectation is that 1 win.
2.
That's what you have.
2. Yeah, 2 is doubling your win total in conference. If you can do that, then slowly but surely, maybe Miami will
100% improvement.
Right. So we'll see. I mean, it's not a guy I was familiar with, but I'm not necessarily up on my USHL coaches. We wish him the best of luck. It's nice to have a conference where now that we have 9 teams in the league.
Teams?
9 times.
It's nice to have 9 teams that are all competent, relevant, and competitive. We've been kind of having this straggler here in Miami, lagging behind, to put it lightly, the last couple of years, and you can inject some new energy into that program, I think that's for the better of the entire conference. So wish him well. And as you mentioned, that's probably a better pickup than Bergeron ever had in the portal. He was only really losing guys like Red Savage from the Wonder Years, who was that person, as we mentioned. I lost another guy too this last year. Can't remember. Most of it was guys bolting and not bringing guys in was Bergeron's issue. And so so far, at least he's been better at the transfer portal game than Bergeron had been in years past. So we'll see if that results in a dramatic turnaround.
Took him all of about 4 days.
Right. He doesn't even have like a full staff there hired, I think.
Yeah.
But he's already bringing guys in single-handedly. So, yeah, wish him well. What else did we have in conference?
I mean, the big one was from Bemidji to Denver, Eric Polkamp. Polkamp, who played on the World Juniors team with Carl and
Brett Larson.
And Brett Larson. So, nothing to see here, folks, right? Or are we just going to chalk this up as a coincidence? No, joking aside, it is kind of the trend that I'm seeing is, going to different, familiar coaches, so to speak. It's, so it's like, they've coached somewhere and then now I'm going to go kind of, I kind of liked how they coached or they fit well together. So I'm going to go ahead and go there. Like Charlie Stramel, who you talked about earlier, at Wisconsin, going to Michigan State. Well, Stramel played with Michigan State's head coach previously. So, maybe there's some of that familiarity there. Allegedly, there were a couple of NCHC schools kind of in the mix when it comes to Polkamp. Denver, North Dakota was highly circulated. I wouldn't be surprised if St. Cloud was also at least threw their hat in the ring when it comes to it, because he's definitely a player that fits the mold that we could have really used. But in the end, he chooses Denver as they prepare for, a national title run. So rich get richer with Denver picking up Polkamp out of the portal.
Yeah, it's a big get for them. I mean, they did have the NCHC Defensive Defenseman of the Year this year with Barons, which I know that you like that selection.
Wow.
But, and not to say Polkamp's like a stay-at-home guy. Like, he puts up points. This is a good get, but he's more in the shut-down defensive mold, I think, than a guy like Z William, who's more offensive talented. Uber offensive talented at that. So, yeah, they're gonna be losing guys. Probably Z William, I think, is gone. This is certainly a capable replacement, and he, from a defensive standpoint, might be an upgrade in the overall defensive showing for Denver. And you got to chalk it up. I would assume the junior experience of Polkamp with Carl played a huge factor in that. I agree with your assessment of the Stramel with Nightingale. I think he was on the NTDP when Nightingale was coaching that. So Nightingale did this. I think that was the same thing with Red Savage from the Wonder Years. I think they were also coach and player relationship from the NTDP days. Say that 5 times fast. But
I hate that acronym so much.
It's
back. Like,
I always have to remind myself how it goes. National Team Development Program, but U18s, maybe that's just a better way to put it. Although I don't know, they were weird too because they play U18s, but then they also play a USHL schedule, and then they also play a bunch of college exhibition games. It's a grueling schedule. They play a ton of games, and it's always littered with high-end talent. but it's just a strange collection because they don't really do very well in the USHL because they're young. They're younger than the other USHL teams even. They're just U18s. I don't know if they have anyone. I think they can't have anyone over U18 for that team. I might be wrong, but anyway, elite program and the ties that players and coaches make sometimes they come up years later in situations like this, where coaches can get guys to move. Now that we got the portal, it's the movement is more enabled than ever. I don't know. My brother and I were talking about this yesterday. He's more of a casual fan, but talking about the movement of the portal, and we saw guys like Sandelin be on the record this last week, kind of grumpy about the portal. We'll put it that way. Do you have any opinions on, is this good for the game? We see people like, McMahon was mentioning the Northern Michigan situation. People were freaking out about that, about how they're losing all these guys. But part of the story was too that Northern Michigan's apparently got a great recruiting class coming in, and the numbers game was going to lead to a lot of guys going into the portal from this year's roster. And so the narrative that CCHA teams are getting gutted by the portal,
it's a feature, not a bug.
In that case, it might not be correct, but you got guys like Polkamp, who's Bemidji's best player, losing him to the NCHC. That is a narrative that I think is taking off. This, we see the RIT guys, Carter Wilkie going to North Dakota. He was their leading scorer, 40 plus points. Maybe he was even the better get from North Dakota this week, other than Seppenfelter. Their RIT's goaltender as well, Richter nominee. He went in the portal. I'm not sure if he's been picked up yet. Scarfone, I haven't checked yet, but he'd be a good acquisition for somebody as well. So this, we see Alaska being ravaged the last couple of years through transfer portal. Like this narrative of the small schools are getting killed by the big schools. That's a narrative that I think dies hard. I think there's something there, but in terms of the big schools are exploiting their advantages over the small schools, that's always been the case. This is just another avenue for them to show their dominance over the smaller schools in areas like recruiting and roster construction. 30 years ago, the Blue Bloods were the ones getting the first round draft picks and not top end talent. That's really not the same these days. It's just the top end talent might have did a year at Holy Cross these days. And now they're, instead of picking those guys up just from the junior ranks or from high school, the Blue Bloods are picking these guys up with college experience already underneath their belt. I don't know if that's better. I don't know if it's worse. I don't think it's significantly widening the gap between rich and poor, figuratively speaking, but I'm open to the suggestion that it can down the road become a big factor. I just look at a team like St. Cloud, who we are well aware of how resource challenged they are. Let's put it. I wouldn't necessarily call them a poor team in terms of the overall scope of college hockey. I wouldn't certainly call them a rich team or a blue blood either. So there may be a middle ground there, but at least in the perspective of following that program the most in the transfer portal era, as we've said, Larson's made out better in the portal. Like, there's more pluses than negatives for him in the portal so far. So a team like St. Cloud certainly isn't being sunk by the portal. And maybe that's solely to the credit of Larson and the coaching staff, whereas another coaching staff wouldn't be able to retain that kind of talent that he's been able to, considering the resources that St. Cloud is up against. But I don't know. Do you have any sense that this is ruining the game, or something's got to be done? You got to shut the portal down. Where are you on the freak out meter?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, obviously the big thing is it's not going anywhere. Courts, litigations, and in the end, I'm also for workers' rights. So I'm going to be on the side of there should be more flexibility. is this too much flexibility now? Maybe, but at the same time, coaches can have this type of flexibility and nobody is any the wiser. So I think when I see like Sandy's comments about it, I'm just kind of like, oh, it's, more of the plutocrats trying to keep the working man down and kind of squash their rights over a free market, type thing. And I kind of am like, well, of course you would. But, I get the fear, and that's, to me, always what it is. It's always the fear of, oh, this is what's going to happen, and it's going to ruin the game because everything's going to go upside down because they're going to develop all these smaller schools, they're going to develop players, they're going to go to another bigger schools. I just look around the portal and I see that in the case of maybe some one-off scenarios, but so many of these transactions I feel are fairly linear. Logan Will, granted, I guess Logan Will, I mean, that was a senior. But when I'm looking through, and the team that I'm seeing is probably the most active in the portal as terms of getting players, Merrimack. Yeah. I mean, that's one. It's like, you would think maybe it would be, a real blue blood going, but Merrimack's getting people from Boston College, and that's where it's like, if you're making room from one end of, a top scorer on a lesser program going in, someone's going to be bumped off. And that's where it's like, you look at some of these blue bloods who routinely scratch players that are going to be top 2 liners somewhere else. That gives them the freedom to kind of maneuver things around. And that's where I think leads to even more of an opportunity for players and more of an opportunity to find players in the right situations, to find the right coaches, and be able to really kind of maneuver to find the right situations for them. So I think people are so focused on what it's going to do to the small schools and not focused enough at that, the big schools are going to have to make room too. And they routinely scratch talent that other teams would be drooling at. So they make room for there. And I think eventually, it's going to be cyclical. And I think it's going to end up kind of shaking out that way. And I think it's nice to have. It's an interesting dynamic. But in the end, these coaches are also general managers where they have to manage the expectations and the players and converse with them and talk about what they want. And, and if you're not happy with your workplace, you get up and leave. And that's kind of where I'm at with things. It's just, I don't see so many situations where a top tier player at a lesser school is going to a blue blood nearly as much as everybody feels that's happening. I just don't see a lot of evidence of it.
I'm kind of interested not when we're talking about this, maybe at the end, I suppose I could go back to the last couple of years to do the research here, but at the end of the day, after all the dust settles in the portal, just look at the transactions from the school that they left to the school that they joined and just chart non-blue blood to blue blood or vice versa. So like the ones that we can just off the top of our heads, like Pole Camp to Denver would be one of these situations where a blue blood is getting a guy from a non-blue blood. Whereas the one you mentioned with Merrimack, I think it was, I know the defenseman you're talking about. I don't think he played much for BC this year. But there was one from BC, blue blood, Merrimack, non-blue blood.
Yeah, Seamus Powell.
And we've got the North Dakota, the Wilkie from RIT to North Dakota. That's one where it's in that camp where it's non-blue blood to blue blood. And then we've got the lateral moves. Strammel from Wisconsin to Michigan State, kind of blue blood to blue blood. So kind of a neutral get there.
And I'm seeing plenty of those.
Right. So I'd like to, at the end of the day, I'd kind of like to just chart all of those and see who makes out, blue bloods or non-blue bloods? I would assume, just my working hypothesis is that the blue bloods make out better, but I don't think it's like an overwhelming margin. And again, I think it's the built-in advantage that blue bloods have always had. It would kind of be the explanation for that. But there is the amount, we could do data. I guess the big thing there is we would just have to classify who are our blue bloods. Is it the Big Ten schools plus BU plus BC plus North Dakota plus Denver? I mean, then there's some gray area after that, I suppose. But we're all talking maybe 12 to 15 teams. But the one that surprises me the most is Wisconsin, with Stramel, Whitelaw, and now Cruz Lucius also being in the portal. 30-plus point scorer for him this year. These are all drafted players. I believe Cruz Lucius was drafted. Stramel, famously, first-round pick.
Carolina.
What round for Lucius? Fourth. What about Whitelaw? Can you see if he's
Columbus?
And then we know Stramel won Minnesota. But three of those guys, all in the portal. Stramel, as we mentioned, has already found a home in Michigan State. But I mean,
like Brady Cleveland is a second round pick of Detroit, and he was Wisconsin. I mean, and he only played 16 games.
He's another one. So they got 4 drafted players that have gone into the portal since the end of the year.
5
drafted players.
Correct. Sam Strange.
Okay,
fourth round, and he only played 7 games. 4th round pick of Detroit, and that's the thing that I'm trying to get
didn't
at.
play much. And it's like Mike Hastings comes into Wisconsin with this reputation of, I'm not a big recruiter, I'm a coach 'em up kind of guy, and I make the most out of my talent. Old, like that's got a lot of that as code word for old players. He has a really good year in Wisconsin his first year, but then all the blue chip talent that he apparently was never able to get in Mankato, they all bolt the minute they can. And I don't know, that if I'm a Wisconsin fan, that kind of troubles me. I know he's a good coach. He doesn't have to prove that anymore. But the fact that you think that his step up to the resources and all that he was now getting at Wisconsin, that he'd at least be able to maintain the top end talent that you think those kind of programs would naturally attract. But so you see, it's not a perfect formula here where it's just all blue bloods benefiting.
Yeah.
Wisconsin, again, it's transfer portal is not the only way you get players, obviously, but from a transfer portal perspective, Wisconsin's on the losing end of it this year, at least so far. And so it can't just be always going to be blue bloods are benefiting.
And what I said about, Brady Cleveland played 16 games, and I mean, he transferred from Wisconsin and is going to Colorado College.
Okay, so, I missed that one. So that's how many years of eligibility does he have left?
Yeah, he's a freshman.
Oh, so he's got 3 more years available to him.
Yep.
Okay.
Now, counterpoint to that, they'll also look at the other side of Wisconsin and take a look at 2 Michigan Tech players went over to Wisconsin. So,
which more fits into the Mike Hastings older player, grittier kind of style. Fits his MO a little bit more. But yeah, so they haven't been completely shut out in terms of the gains and losses in the portal this year. And so, yeah, I don't think there's an easy answer, an easy, convenient narrative to apply to the portal. It's just not much has changed in terms of the results. It's just the means of how the blue bloods have certain advantages over other schools. Obviously, that has changed in the last couple of years. I'm not scared about the portal. I mean, I think it's fine. I'm largely with you in terms of the workers' rights kind of angle to it. I hesitate a little bit. I made this comparison maybe last year about, grad student in college, if he's not satisfied in his program, he can go somewhere else. And why can't we do it? Same here. There is a bit of an issue or a difference, let's say. If we are going to classify these athletes as employees rather than students, it's a little bit of a different relationship. student to school versus employer to employee. Thinking about the latter, the implications there would be we're probably not that far away from like contracts getting drawn up. And maybe that's a solution to some of this, as far as like the guys that double dippers, let's say. Instead of maybe in the future, you're signing a contract that you can't break for 3 years unless you want to go to face litigation for that. Maybe that's the next step in this. If people are hesitant about this sort of action, if they're employees and employers, it's not students.
Sign an NDA as well.
But then you get into the fact that what if another school offers a better contract? Maybe in the contract, they'll put a clause in there to cover the litigation for breaking the previous contract. This will never really stop. The door is open. NCAA doesn't want it. This was something foisted upon them. So there's nothing really they can do. I'm just wondering if, again, I don't know if this is even possible legally. Like, can they say, we'll give you the one free transfer where you don't have to sit out, but a second time you got to sit out a year? Like, it seems to me that that's something that legally can't be done at this point with their losing track record. Their 0.000 batting average in court on this issue. I don't see how that's really going to be possible. From a fan's perspective, I would probably like that, but I don't know. When you get into the sort of the higher end talent, we're not the years of 4-year guys at college is the 4-end high end talent kind of guys at college. That's long gone anyway. So we're maybe talking about a year here, a year there. I don't think it's certainly going to wreck the sport. Same with like the nil money. Hear that argument too. Like, how can St. Cloud keep up with that if teams like Minnesota or Big Ten schools, they've got these war chests that they can have these unlimited funds, or St. Cloud doesn't have that. Is that going to be something in the future that's going to play against the Huskies? The answer there is yes, but that's been the case ever since they started a program. So we should be concerned, but is it I think concern in terms of if it's going to significantly widen the gap that's already there. I'm skeptical that it'll amount to that. I'm not skeptical that it does benefit the Blue Bloods as a whole in general. But does it completely obliterate the possibility for smaller schools to compete? Not necessarily. You can look at the last couple of years. We've talked about this with the NCAA tournament being more chalky, being more... You look at the Frozen Four this year. Blue Blood City. All 4 teams are traditional powers with big resources and sexy names when it comes to college hockey. Mainly the same last year, except for Quinnipiac, the team that won it. 3 out of the 4 teams fit that same bill. And maybe that is further evidence that this is maybe widening the gap a little bit. But again, I think this year is the last of the 5-year rule, which I think will calm things down a little bit. And so I'm pumping the brakes a little bit on the sky is falling. Let's get rid of the transfer portal. And from Sandlin's perspective, just stop it. Like, get a guy out of the portal. Participate in the system. Maybe be the change you want to be. It's open for everybody. So less complaining and more action, I think, would be my... He can do whatever he wants. He can sit on his hands and be a grumpy sourpuss. Do that. Be 7th place again.
You want to actually, do that. Do that. Take the program. You deserve it, Duluth.
Don't get anybody in the portal out of spite. I like that idea, actually.
Yeah. I am looking though a lot for some of the independents though, which I actually haven't really looked at until just this moment. But I mean, granted, it's Stonehill, but Stonehill with 12 players in the portal right now. Lindenwood with 8.
Both of those teams, new coaches. That factors into it too. Whenever you have a coach leave, there's a natural rush to the transfer portal for those guys. A lot of those guys.
Arizona State right now has 7.
Yeah, well, Alaska thinks over 10.
And then, Alaska.
Anchorage 2.
Yeah, Alaska 11, Anchorage at 9. So it's, I do kind of wonder what's going to happen with the independents that don't have a conference home as well. To kind of go back to.
Yeah, that's a major disadvantage for them.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change. That's probably what they're destined to be, is sort of a feeder team to everybody else until those teams can, or I think the shot is pretty remote for the Alaskas to get into a conference. Better prospects for Stonehill and Lindenwood, just from a geographic standpoint. But the fact they don't have a conference, that limits your ceiling. The Alaska effect is the travel, the playing at 4 a.m. Eastern time in Alaska. You just have less exposure to like scouts and pro prospects. There's a lot of reasons why you shouldn't play in Alaska.
I heard the scenery is wonderful.
Oh, sure.
And from what I have seen in the first, 4 or 5 seasons of The Deadliest Catch, the crab is on the move, so to speak, as Mike Rose says.
I think that's code for something, and I don't want to know what it is.
Just, you got to be either on the crab or the crab is on the move, or wherever you are in relation to Dutch Harbor is what matters there. Deadliest Catch.
Well, the crab.
4 people probably got that. It's like, God, I love Deadliest Catch.
Whatever the case may be, the crab's been sidling over to the portal in mass numbers. So, R.I.P. Thoughts and prayers to Alaska and their fans, and to Anchorage as well.
Nooks.
Yeah, it's just unfortunate. There's really not much you can do. I mean, but these are that's a whole separate set of challenges. I mentioned like St. Cloud's challenges. We're happy to not have that set of challenges. But we're big fans of the Alaskas on this podcast. We would prefer for them to be in some conference, but we've gone over their limited prospects, chances at that. Hopefully that can turn around.
And
but that's
clearly
be a big
the
reason.
NCHC doesn't want them. We created this contract to exclude them, actually.
Well, CCHA specifically literally did that. Killed the men's WCHA just to get Alaska, Anchorage, and Huntsville out of the conference. Like, they didn't need to do that. Like, they had their 8 teams plus those 3 teams. Instead of them saying, you know what, you're kicked out of the league, said, well, we'd probably get sued or something for that. So why don't we just bolt and join another conference, and then
of a previous name?
Yeah, and just leave you there to wither by the side of the road. Credit to the Alaska schools for at least making a run at it. Huntsville's still in dormancy.
Yeah.
So we've got multiple conferences to blame here, and Big Ten, you can't leave them without any blame. So they're the impetus to have started the NCHC, and then the WCHA's ashes then morphed into the CCHA. At the end of the day, it just left the 2 Alaska schools really in the cold, literally and figuratively. And we're at the point where this is a yearly thing. This happened to him last year, too. This is why we have Carl Falk on the team. They lost a bunch of guys last year, too. So I would assume this is going to be an annual thing, that Alaska just guts their roster every year because of this. But it sucks. But it is what it is.
Last we didn't go much into the Frozen 4 last episode. So should we get that out of the way before we get into the Herbies? Frozen 4, obviously, BU, Denver, Boston College, and Michigan. Who you got? Who do you like? Kind of, what are your thoughts about this weekend?
Yeah, go back to last show if you want a more in-depth analysis of these teams. no secret, I've made it BC best team in recent memory in college hockey. I'm going with, so maybe let's go. We got 3 games here. We got BC versus Michigan. We've got Denver versus BU. I'm going to go Denver over BU. I'm going to go 4-2. BC, I think it's going to be a game with them. I'll go 5-3 with an empty netter. BC over Michigan. And then I'm going to go 5-4 BC over Denver in overtime in the championship game. Give me 3 scores.
I am going to go BU over Denver.
Really?
And I think that is going to be 4-2.
Also 4-2, but 4-2 BU.
But 4-2 BU. I'm going BC over Michigan, and I am going that 7-5.
Wow.
So that's going to be a barn burner because that's just kind of how I feel about.
And it's going to be like an even set, like exchanging goals, or is it going to be it's 7-2 BC and then Michigan scores a couple of irrelevant goals?
It'll be fairly even, but it's like BC will have like a couple of 2-goal leads.
Okay.
So
in control, but
in control, and
interesting.
Then like Michigan will have one, and then BC will extend it, and kind of back and forth like that. And then BC against BU, so it's going to be actually a bean pot redux, so to speak. And that one I'm going to go with, again, Boston College, and I'm going to go 4-1 on that.
4-1. You got an outstanding player of the tournament.
Will Smith.
I'll go Gauthier.
I think Will Smith, who did not get a Herbie hat trick, is going to be pretty ticked off about it, and I think he's gonna be like, "Hey, I'm here too, guys."
And then I'm picking Gauthier to be the offensive or the outstanding player of the Frozen Four, and I'm also going to pick him to be the Hobie. It's Gauthier, Celebrini, and Jackson Blake. Which I nailed that from a couple of weeks ago.
You did.
Even speculating if Blake's cheap shot at the end, or attempted cheap shot, let's say, at the end of the Michigan game, may have cost him a spot there. Who I don't think is going to win anyway. I think it's between Celebrini and Gauthier. Do you have a pick for Hobie?
I was going to go with Celebrini.
You're going to go with Celebrini. Okay. Well, let's put that down. Put those down, and we'll come back next week and get the receipts. The tournament in St. Paul.
In St. Paul.
You're not going down, are you?
I am not, but I mean, ticket prices obviously have come down quite a bit especially after Minnesota's loss in the regionals. So it's so I wasn't planning on it, but last I heard, my parents were thinking about going down on Thursday if they can get tickets and just be some good hockey. So. Dan Jacobson did ask for his question about, if you're traveling for the Frozen Four, popular places to visit, popular places to go, downtown St. Paul, it's hopping place.
Can you imagine if some BU fan stumbled upon this podcast and found this question to be especially useful?
God, right? Exactly.
This is more just asking Dan, or telling Dan Jacobson, basically asking you, are there any good restaurants by the X that I haven't been to that you would recommend?
I mean, that's the thing is, you just go down kind of West 7th. Is that what it is? I guess I can't.
It's one of them, right?
But it's, it was Eagle Street. I did like Eagle Street, but now that's
is that the Zambonis?
Which is, I think, where the meetup is for College Hockey News, I think. So you can shake Woden's hand if you want to. He'll probably
kiss the ring.
Kiss the ring of Woden. So
Now, is the only Frozen Four that you've been to in Pittsburgh?
Correct.
You didn't go to any of the other ones in St. Paul?
Nope.
I just checked this too. Do you know the last time the Frozen Four has been in St. Paul that has not featured a Minnesota team?
Oh, what? I mean, was it that, what, 88? Or was it after that?
More recent than that.
Okay. Mid-90s?
91. I've made reference to this several times. It's the Northern Michigan 8-7 thriller over BU.
I was thinking of that game. I just thought it was the late 80s, not the early 90s. That's right.
That was 91. My dad and my brother went to that game.
I think that game's on YouTube.
Yes, it's the best sporting event he's ever been to. It's a barn burner of a game. Dave Shayak was the captain of Northern Michigan. Mention that every time because maybe we can snag him as a guest because we would just talk about that game for the majority of the podcast. But it's been there 1, 2, 3, 4 times since then. Obviously, Duluth winning it the last 2 times it's been there in 2018, 2011. 2002, Gophers beating Maine. This one I did have to check. 94, it was at the St. Paul Civic Center. And that was Lake State beating BU 9-1 in that title game. But the Gophers made the Frozen Four. They played BU in that semifinal. So the Gophers were there at that one. So the last one that was Minnesota team free was 91. The 89 one is maybe the one you were thinking of. That was Harvard beating the Gophers in overtime championship game. I think it was Randy Scarda was the Gopher player's name who hit the pipe in overtime. It's the one where they say was Woog's best chance to win a title. But they hit the pipe, and then Harvard came down and scored, and the Gophers lost to an Ivy League team in St. Paul for a national championship. Prior to that, there was I was just looking at all of them. There was 4 other Frozen Fours in Minnesota prior to that. 2 in Duluth at the DAC. In 81 and 68, and then 2 at the old Mariucci in Williams Arena in 66 and 58. The 81 Frozen Four in Duluth did feature the Gophers in the title game. They lost to Wisconsin that year. The other 3 prior to that, no Minnesota team made those. But like I said, since 94, the ones that have been in Minnesota, other than this one, have featured a Minnesota team. So this is the first time in a while that there's been one here without a Minnesota presence. But I think we're in for a treat with these matchups.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be exciting hockey to say the least. So
indeed.
But as far as restaurants, dress up a little bit. But Kincaid's was the place that I really liked. I got the surf and turf there, and it was filet mignon and lobster tail, I believe. And no, that's what my wife got. And then I got a New York strip and Alaskan king crab. I was on the crab there at Kincaid's. So highly recommend that. A little bit pricey, but if you say it's your honeymoon, they'll toss in a little bit of bubbly and some creme brulee. So I recommend that place. It's kind of in the Rice Park area, so it's actually kind of behind, by the Orpheum there. Not the Orpheum, the Ordway. So, which I've been to many times also because I'm cultured. I've seen Spam-A-Lot and Jesus Christ Superstar there at the Ordway.
I'm trying to find out, is it...
Don't tell me it's closed.
No. Is it Cassetta's? Is that the deli? Like the Italian deli that's right by the X? There's like a restaurant there, but then there's also a deli. I would always make a stop there to get like high-end salami and like those kind of meats like that. So good. So if you ever like want to have a good meal, but also like take home 5 pounds of lunch meat, That's, I think, a definite.
It's always my favorite.
That's a good area. I've always liked where the area around the X. It's been a while. Been years. Probably one of the last. Probably the last time I was there was B20. It would have been for Frozen Face Off, maybe 2016. Might be the last time I've been there.
Oh wow!
So it's been a while. So you're more up to date as far as what's still open and closed and what's changed over.
Yeah, they've added quite a bit of housing there too, trying to make it.
Yeah, I think
a walkable area.
Yeah. Yes, I did know someone that moved into those like pretty high end apartments there, right on the river. So yeah, it's a good area.
So, should we get to the Herbies?
I think so.
All right, perfect. We'll get to the Herbies. We'll go ahead and start with some of the nominees. A moment that everyone's been waiting for.
We should do this next year because, for the Oscars, I don't know why they do this, but they announced the Oscar nominations at like 5 a.m. No, it's just the nominations, not the actual ceremony. It's the nominations, but they're announced at 5 a.m. local time in Los Angeles. It's like, why? Why do you not wait until the rest of the world is up? So we should next year. We should record our nomination podcast at 5 a.m. And that way people will wake up to the news of the Herbie nominations because that's how it works.
All right.
But yeah, these are the nominees.
Where do you want to start?
Well, we did add a category this year.
We did.
We're going to talk about how the sausage is made a little bit. We did add a Goaltender of the Year award. It's technically the Jace Wozlowski Goaltender of the Year award presented by Xbox. When we started this last year, we were only kind of figuring the men's team in this. And the reason we didn't have a Goaltender of the Year award is because most years you're just going to have one goalie. We didn't feel like there was going to be much compelling action in that category. But now if we're getting the women's team involved too, at least we'll have two nominees every year, even if the teams have one solid starter, bulk starter for the year. So we got a competition there, and we were thinking, God, do we put the goaltenders in with the defenseman of the year award? No, I'm not sure. We just decided to start a new category. So you'll hear a new sounder for that. I got to make a new sounder for that category. But so we did carve out that new category. So that's new for this year. And then this year, because we are also factoring in the women's team, we don't have a set number of nominees for each category. Most of them were 4. I think there was one that just had 3. I can't remember. Did we all go to 4 on all these?
No, we stayed at 3 for defense because we couldn't think of another.
Okay, yeah. It's similar to some Oscar categories, which aren't like fixed number of nominees, but generally at least 3, sometimes 4. There might be years that there's like, especially goaltender, like there could be years that there's just 2. So we don't have a set number of nominees, but this year, most of them, like I said, 4 nominees, 3 nominees for one category or 2. So that's kind of the process. These are just the nominations. As Weldie mentioned, we'll put the vote up on his Twitter page so the fans can have a say in this.
A say in it.
A say.
Not the say.
But we want to get your involvement here as well. And
hashtag engagement.
Hashtag all you on that engagement. Hashtag I don't got no Twitter account. But you
got to post it on the Green Ground.
I will. I'm not slacking on Green Ground anymore. So yeah, let's get started. Where do you want to start?
I suppose we should go. Let's start in the back end then. Let's start with goalie of the year, new category. Okay. So we have Sani Ahola. We've got Jojo Chobak, Isaac Posh. Were the 3, and then we were also debating about putting James Gray in there too.
We just went with the 3 though.
I don't know. The more I think about it, maybe throwing in Gray as one last parting shot to Bassie as he goes to
twist the knife there as he's getting settled in St. Lawrence. I'm fine with that.
Maybe it's a little bit harsh.
It kind of is. I like having a little bit of fun with these. That's a cruel kind of fun, but that's up to you, producer. However you want to settle that dispute. I thought we only had the 3, but that one's all you.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, maybe we don't put Gray in there. Yeah, let's not put Gray in there.
We are not putting Bassie there, though. I guess we will twist the knife in that regard, but
yeah,
we're just going. Maybe
that's like head on a hat. Maybe that's a little too much if we also put Gray on there.
We're just
if we put Cocaine Bear on there,
we're just giving Bassie some bulletin board material at that point.
Yeah, so exactly. Does St. Cloud play St. Lawrence? Battle of the Saints?
I don't think they do. I don't know if they've ever played them.
God, they should. We should have a traveling trophy for the Saint battle.
The Tour of Saints.
Tour, yeah.
Do we have a Saint trophy with St. Thomas?
Let's get a tournament going. Like an all Huskies tournament. Let's get an all Saints tournament. All Saints.
Is there a 4th?
Let's do it on All Saints Day. When is All Saints Day?
It's like November. It's like the day after Halloween, right? I think it's November 1st. It'd be
perfect.
It's in hockey season.
Yeah.
Do we have another Saints or Saint team in college hockey? I don't think that we do. That might. Maybe we got some. We can get some like honorary Saints. Holy Cross. That's like Sacred Heart. Your guys.
Sacred Heart. Holy Cross. We got some. We got some potential here. Maybe it's not 100%, but
yeah, Boston College, they're definitely Catholic. Notre Dame. Put them in there.
Yeah, Notre Dame wouldn't want to.
I don't know if they'd want to slum it with some of these second-rate schools.
They'd have to wash their hands afterwards while they wash their feet too. I think that's a Catholic thing, right? I don't know. Sorry. Now I just ticked off all the Catholics that listen, so I apologize.
I think we got something there. Either that or we. Oh, how about this? Women's side, St. Anselm.
Oh, there we go.
In the Nuha. And St. Thomas and St. Lawrence also play in the women's side. So we got 4 Saints.
So we got 4 Saints on the women's side.
Let's get that. Let's make that happen.
Let's I'll call Adalski.
And of those 4
Adalski,
Saints,
are you chewing your gum right now? Spit it out because I got something for you.
And of those 4 Saints, Tommy, St. Larry, St. Anselm, definitely St. Cloud was the most gracious of those saints. You know, the patron saint of overcast weather. And he was something to behold.
I have. This is all way over my head right now. Is there really a saint of overcast weather?
Of course not.
I have no idea.
I don't even think there was a St. Cloud. I mean, St. Cloud comes from a town in France. The guy's name is not Cloud. I'll tell you that. It's like Saint Cloud. It's some French. Claude. It's like where Napoleon had his summer home or something. Or I think it's Josephine was from St. Cloud. St. Cloud. It's something to do with French, and it's something to do with Napoleon, and now I'm hungry for a donut, is all I'm saying.
I don't know, like Hermes was the god of athletics or whatnot. Why wouldn't there be a cloud, the saint of overcast weather?
It's an old joke I used to use. Overcast weather and terrible traffic. That's the patron saint of St. Cloud is the patron saint of those things. Gotcha. If St. Cloud, Minnesota were any indication, potholes and
is that going to be gritty St. Cloud? Dave Kleiss had some interesting things to say on Almanac. I will say that, but that's a different aside story. How I accidentally watched Almanac for about 10 minutes the other night. like voluntarily. Like I even went into PBS Passport. That's a thing. If you really want to know the story, I'll tell you my Eric Escalo story later. If you want it on Twitter. Anyway, defense.
See what happens when we have Herbie nominations? Defense. Who do we got here? I don't even have the list. I don't know why you're asking me. Who are the nominees? And the nominees are
Dylan Anhorn, Clara Himlerova, and Dale Ross. We thought about. I mean, I've been very critical of Peart, so I wasn't going to put him on the list. And
yeah, we really wanted to get a second men's player here.
Yeah,
but we just who?
And that's the thing is like, I thought Lidke was
really
more frustrating.
Does it really rise to the level of a nomination worthy season?
So,
and I'm even one to. I've admitted that the entire time Peart was here that I'm probably underrating him because of the amount of hype I had with him coming into his career at St. Cloud. So I could probably think that I'm underrating his year this year, even though I don't have a very fond memory of it. We were probably closer to giving either Millwater, like putting a third women's defense on this list rather than a second men's player. Lidke's probably the closest one, but I just don't think he was quite up to snuff, quite up to the nomination level. Yep. So I'm happy with these three as being the nominees.
Wiley, I thought, was just too streaky. Maybe if Reiners didn't get injured, but even when he did play, I thought he was a little bit behind. As far as on the women's side, with Himmler over Ross, you said Millwater. Grace Wolf, when she was not injured.
If Wolf had the whole year, she would probably be a nominee for sure. She was off to a great start. And Himlerova too, like we'll get back to her. This is not the only nomination she's got, but I had a little bit of hesitation there because 60% of the year was at defense, 40% of the forward. So it's not like that was not a runaway pick either, but I think she's worthy of nomination. And like I said, we'll get back to her as well later in the nomination process. What do we got next? Rookie?
Let's go rookie. So rookie of the year, we've got Werner Miettinen, Tyson Gross, Ellie Soriel, and Isaac Posh for our rookie of the year.
I think a good couple of candidates.
And I kind of wanted to throw in Grace Delmonico as my eating crow pick, but all this means is that she can be on the list next year for rookie of the year. So it's just opening up that. So we'll have, but that's a really good kind of crop for freshmen. And then obviously Barrett Hall being off the list was something as well.
Probably if we were doing like a preseason Herbies, I bet. Well, it would have been Hall and Delmonico would have been the preseason rookie of the year. We know how Delmonico's season went, and Hall certainly had flashes. Yeah,
like it's Schrodinger's season for her. It's really how it is.
We just hope that she actually exists.
Yes,
that's my hope. But yeah, Hall might have been the prohibitive favorite for this category coming into the year, and not even cracking the top 4 as it turned out. But Posh's emergence in the second half, Gross's emergence, particularly in the second half, and then also Surreal from the women's side, a scoring-starved team, particularly in the second half. But she was one of the few somewhat consistent sources of that offense. I think she's got a bright future there on the women's side. So glad to give her a nomination for this as well. But a good category because we feel like we left someone off, and we had to talk about, like, have a little discussion about that. But it's better to have too many candidates rather than not enough, like some of these categories that we've gone through already. So I like this. I like this batch of nominees.
Yep, very much so. Let's go over to forward. Forward of the year, we have Veeti, Miettinen, Emma Gentry, Kyler Kupka, and Katie Kaufman are the 4 nominees there.
Wavered a little bit with Kaufman. Fun fact, though, she outscored Gentry. I think it's kind of conventional wisdom that Gentry's the best, at least offensive player on the team. She was hurt this year for 5-6 games I think she missed, but even with a goal or a points average, Kaufman outpaced her as well, so we felt like Kaufman's nominee was warranted. And then from the men's side too, we've got Miettinen, top scorer, 35 points, top scorer among the forwards, at least. Was he tied with Anhar is at 33, so Miettinen was the top scorer overall, 35 points. Kupka, the only other 30-point scorer among the forwards at 32 points. And, I've raved about his game, all-around game as well. So I think those 2 nominations were warranted. Ingram's name was thrown out there as well. Did we bring up Okabe? He had a disappointing year.
Yeah, and that's kind of what it boils down to, is that, again, at the beginning of the year, Okabe's name probably would have been
up here.
Would have been up on this list, but how it went for long stretches, unfortunately, just wasn't able to materialize.
So he's absent. So, yeah, I think a good 4 here for the forwards. 4 words, get it?
4 words.
Yeah, we'll see how that one shakes out. I don't think there's not a ton of these. I mean, I can't see a lot of these being slam dunk categories. Like, if they we don't really reveal the final vote in terms of my vote, your vote, and the fan vote. But just peeking behind the curtain, I don't see a ton of these categories being 3-0. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. I pick them, you pick them, the fans picked them. It's probably going to be a lot of 2-1s, and I don't think there's going to be a lot of unanimous choices, which is, I think it makes it interesting. It also probably explains why these, we didn't have a tournament team out of the bunch this year, St. Cloud, because there's not really obvious, this person was definitely the defensive player of the year, or this was the forward of the year, bar none. That's part of the problem when you get basically 500 teams between the 2 of them. So, but yeah, good nominees there. What we want to move to? I probably want to leave MVP to the last.
Yep, let's leave MVP to the last. Let's go with moment of the year, which I actually have a lot of notes. I can't remember what we ended up on this one. So, as far as the women's side, the moments that jump out to us, and we kind of looked at this as what will we remember about this season?
You kind of have to have a philosophical, not debate, but just conversation about what moment of the year means.
What does it mean to you? What does a moment?
What does moment of the year mean? From my perspective, it's what will I remember 3 years from now? Let's just say, throwing out a random number. What will I remember from this season in future years? I can look back and
it's the season before remember the when Huskies won the title.
Right,
is what did.
But in particular, that season, I remember these things in particular from that season. Again, we've just mentioned these are 2 basically 500 teams, maybe the definition of unmemorable. But there's always going to be a batch of moments that you do carry with you, and some of these are more off the wall. We like to keep this one kind of like a wild card category. So if you're not sure exactly what we're going for, I think I know what we narrowed it down to. But for the women's side, we had the Ohio State win.
At Ohio State, number 1 team in the nation.
One of 4 losses that Ohio State had all year.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest win of the year. I mean, from a like a pairwise perspective from either team. So that was definitely up there. The one that when I was trying to think of this in terms of memorability from the women's side, the December home game against the Gophers, where things, let's say, spiraled out of control a little bit towards the end. Himlarova being on the receiving end of kind of a cheap shot. I think it was Ella.
She was sitting down at the boards taking a knee to the face
from the Gophers, and then shortly after that, kind of in response to that, it was a CC Bowlby, I don't know, take 3 steps and bowl over Abby Murphy on the ensuing faceoff for a well-deserved 5
well-deserved 5 minute. And
it was just
and I believe
they killed it off. They killed it off. Yeah, the Gophers ended up winning in a shootout, but they survived. Basically, that entire overtime was a power play for the Gophers.
Yeah, I think it was like 12 seconds or something like that. That wasn't a power play.
It's memorable, even a game that they technically lost, pairwise tie, but a shootout loss. At that point of the season, this is right on the heels of them beating Ohio State at Ohio State. This would have been the Tuesday night game after that weekend series out in Columbus. And it was a moment where I sensed that we might actually have like an actual rivalry started here with the Gophers. And as we said throughout the year, this is not the best Gopher team that they've had, for sure. Yeah. And this is still a Gopher program over St. Cloud, which has been historically dominant over the Huskies. But that gap has significantly narrowed in the last couple of years. And this was a moment where a true rivalry it really can't flourish if there's just complete domination in terms of wins and losses from one team to the other. Obviously, that hasn't completely changed. The Gophers didn't lose to the Huskies this year. But in terms of intensity and in terms of the competitiveness on the ice, this was the first kind of revelation that this is, and we saw it a little bit in the Mariucci game a couple of months or maybe a month prior to this as well. Same with Himlarova getting under Murphy's skin. That spilled over to this game. Murphy took 3 penalties, including a dive. We were well aware of Murphy's shtick after this game and how it was fueling kind of resentment and just grittiness. Hashtag St. Cloud or Gritty St. Cloud. But it was a moment where it felt like this is an actual rivalry that started between these two teams. And it's another sign that this is a program with St. Cloud that's becoming relevant and becoming a team that other teams fear in terms of this kind of at least aggressiveness or however you want to label it. So it was important, not in the fact that they had a huge win, but it's something that I will remember going forward, because you just don't especially see that in the women's game. Runs like that and kind of cheap shots, and not to glorify that aspect of it, but I do feel like it sent a signal that this team isn't just a cute program that's kind of gonna, oh yeah, we'll win, we'll beat Ohio State and be happy with that. No, this is a program that's got higher goals than that in mind and is working to achieve that. It obviously didn't work out in the second half of the year, but I think this was an indication that this is a team that's taking itself seriously and that other teams are taking them seriously as well. So that's kind of why I circled this one as a nominee for moment of the year.
No, I like that one. I really enjoy, I guess, the fire alarm going off as a moment, and I think that is very indicative of how the season went. In a sense of I don't know, false sense of panic, but at the same time things aren't going right here at the Concrete Cathedral. So I had the fire alarm on the list, and I think
in particular that being in the Denver series, the Denver massacre at home, fitting in a poetic sense. I think that was the third period of the Saturday game too. So this is the 6th period of what's been a bloodbath, basically. And so, yeah, I mean, it's not a fun one. I don't think this is going to win the moment of the year. But in a season where it wasn't all unicorns and rainbows, perhaps this can be a symbolic kind of moment of the year. But one that, again, off the wall, it's not something that's game related necessarily. It's something that's outside the arena. And it's kind of a indirect nomination to Jason Bryant and to the in-game crew there, because their playlist during that fire alarm was
top notch.
It was lit, to keep the pun going. And so we did think that was worthy of a maybe tongue-in-cheek nomination. But we like that one. And then I think we also got the Kupka game time goal.
Yes, that's
against
right.
Michigan.
Yeah.
Which we mentioned last show. That was kind of, we were brainstorming on the fly here live on the show. And that was one where we saw that together, 1 foot apart from each other, standing on the concourse, watching that right from the blue line base. It was a great sight line for that.
Yep, that was a great angle for that.
About 10 seconds to go in that game, 3-0 deficit that they were able to come back from. Of the success, if you can put it that way, that St. Cloud had against Frozen Four teams this year, seeing as Michigan made the Frozen Four, Denver making the Frozen Four as well, just being able to scratch out 1 tie against Denver and then the 1 tie against Michigan, it stands out as like one of the high water marks as far as good results this year in terms of high pairwise, or at least Frozen Four teams. And also too, I don't know if we mentioned this, but this could, I don't know if it's like really part of the moment of the year, but that was the first weekend, I believe. Remind me. That was the first weekend that they used the throwbacks.
Yes, it was.
Which I wonder if that's going to continue, because as it turned out, St. Cloud didn't really do very well in those throwbacks. I wonder if it's like a bad luck kind of thing. Maybe that'll result in you finally being able to get one of those jerseys.
Yeah,
because it'll be available. But they ended up using them a fair amount of times this year, and like I said, not a ton of great success, wins and losses in that. But that was the first weekend of that, and people were kind of hyped about that aspect of it as well. Having Michigan in the building for the first time is a good atmosphere. I was glad to have taken that one in person, and I think that was definitely one of the better positive moments of the year for the men's side.
The other one I kind of thought of was the creation of the Dump and Change podcast.
That's a good one.
And
you didn't say that before the show. That's a good one.
I didn't, because I just thought about it now. But more specifically, I mean, their interviews are fun to watch too. But more specifically, like the behind the scenes stuff is kind of a cool little look into the other side of Husky athletics. Going to different locker rooms and, pre and post game meals. I find that all that stuff really interesting. So,
and I do think it enhanced the experience of following the women's team this year. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can have a new category: best podcast. It'd be Dump and Change, and then us. I don't know if you because an Emmys, Bob Odenkirk isn't just nominated for Better Call Saul. He's nominated for one episode of Better Call Saul.
Sure.
That's how it goes. So I don't know if you nominate the individual episode. It's hard to narrow it down for our best episode because they're all great.
Because they're all golden.
Is there a best Dump and Change episode that you can remember?
I mean, I think having
the Adulski,
Billy Hengen laugh at
the Hengen one. Yeah.
laugh at me asking about anyone taking a Brocklehurst slap shot during practice. That was a good laugh.
I guess we could rank the questions that you had on the show, like the Dulski gum chewing one, the Hengen one that he chuckled at. That could be a subcategory too.
We're getting a little bit deep in the weeds here. Well, we could do like a breakout star with Devin Millwater and her little quibs.
The Duluth one was good because that was the one where Myers broke her arm.
Yep,
he had a lot happen in that one.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that would be up there.
That was a good one.
Yeah, and the Adulski episode too was it? That one was one where I'm just it's on the background, and I'm doing work on my computer. I was not getting any work done. My eyes were glued to the TV during that one. But he has me under a trance whenever he talks.
So, I don't know. We'll give an honorable shout out to Dump and Change, but I think
I don't know. Yeah, like I said, I don't know if we can boil that down to a moment. Like there's got to be a special moment, but yeah, I like the honorable mention of it at least.
So perfect. Goal of the year. We have Avery Myers against St. Thomas, where she was able to go by 2 defenders and slip at 5-hole. We have Emma Gentry against Ohio State at home. And I believe it was on Valley Sports. So
it was the Saturday game. It was a hockey day. The hockey day. Yep, it was the Saturday game at home.
Yeah. So Gentry picks off a pass in the slot out of midair, bats it down, and just fires a quick wrister past the Ohio State goalie, which is now actually it looks to be confirmed that Ohio State got a new goalie in the portal. By the way, if you want to guess who that could be?
Did they get McLeod?
They did end up getting McLeod.
You kidding me?
Yeah. Right.
Is Kirk still there? Does she have another year? I know Teely's gone. She's graduated. But that Kirk is the one that just won the national title for them. I thought she had another year. I think she is a transfer herself. I did see too that Wisconsin's that Gervais is in the portal. She was splitting time for the majority of the year with McNaughton, and then McNaughton got the playoff starts. Similar to how Kirk got the playoff starts for Ohio State, even though Teely she had won the national title for Ohio State as their goalie in 2022. But I thought that Kirk might have had another year or two. I mean, as we mentioned, the goalie tandems in women's hockey are kind of the sexy thing to do now. So it might just be those two doing a tandem. But you're thinking if that was the case, like McLeod is trying to get out of a tandem situation in UMD, and then she's going to go and do a tandem in Ohio State instead. I suppose that's an upgrade still, because Ohio State's better than Duluth. But yeah, you kind of called that pre-PTSD there. You didn't want that to happen, and that's exactly what happened.
Yep.
So I'm sure you're really happy about that.
Absolutely lovely. So,
no, Kirk is a grad student too. She's gone as well. Teely has another year left. She could take a 5th year, but she kind of lost her job towards the last half of the year. She lost. Like Kirk got all the important starts for Ohio State down the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
So it's whether Teely comes back for a 5th year. It might be more McLeod's show. That's interesting. Any other action out of the women's portal? I guess we missed that. All right, I missed that. You've been more on top of that.
Nothing as far as really relating to WCHA that's been.
I see that St. Cloud got a a St. Thomas.
Oh, yep. St. Cloud got a St. Thomas forward. Who had 11 points in 37 games. Is it Abria? Brija?
We'll go with it.
Parent.
So we've got a new Husky.
Yep. So we got a new Husky,
in
and
the
then
fold.
Yep. But kind of the big one, transfer from Quinnipiac to Minnesota Duluth. That's Nina
Steigoff,
who had 32 points in 37 games. So Duluth getting a good one there. Yeah, the Reek Live hasn't updated the Haley McLeod one. So, but I did see a tweet about how that's
a shame.
Like that's going to be the case.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on that too. I know the resources
hopefully I'm wrong.
Are a little bit more limited. Oh, so you're not 100% sure that McLeod's made that move. Where did you say you saw it?
Ian Kennedy tweeted out from the Hockey News.
Ian Kennedy, he's like the pitcher for the Royals back in the day.
Sure, him too.
Okay, didn't know that he was into women's hockey as well, but good to know.
Yep.
All right, so we're off on another tangent.
Yeah, exactly. Avery Myers, Emma Gentry, Joe Molenaar. His goal where he also burned by a defender and pulled out moves that I never saw Joe Molenaar make. That was a heck of a goal there by him.
Again, remind me too, I still haven't seen that one since the goal, but I just remember at the time saying that's going to be a Herbie nominee.
Yep.
So I was just wondering, that's the Saturday 6-0 game against Miami. He scored a hat trick in that game.
Yep.
And that's obviously the game. Was it the first goal? I think it was.
Pretty sure it was the first.
It was.
The second one was from behind the net.
And the third one was garbage time. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yeah, the first goal in the 6-0 game. And I'm excited to see it again because I remember it being a very slick goal.
Yep. But I do see that very similar to Avery Myers' goal against St. Thomas too. So it's be interesting with those two.
We even had some debate about specific Gentry goals.
Yes.
She had the goal at Mankato where scores a goal and immediately plows over an opponent. In the same kind of motion.
In the same motion. Goal and then just bodies a player. It was pretty awesome to watch.
That was there. And then this one.
But that one out of the midair, like the puck out of the midair one.
You like those. I mean, you've always been pro high stick, like batting pucks in with stick. You're on the record saying that there should be no high sticking or like too above the crossbar.
There should be no high sticking played by the puck rules. Yeah. Infraction. High sticking penalties, yes.
But playing the puck with high stick, like directing a goal with a stick, touching the puck above the crossbar should be completely legitimate.
Yep. 100%.
So you're on the record for that. This was completely legal, but in the same sense, it's, as you say, it's a skill. It's hand-eye coordination. It takes skill to do that. Ask Nolan Walker against Mankato in the Frozen Four a couple years ago. It's a beauty to behold when we see a good one like that. So yeah, I'm happy to give that one the nomination. And again, we don't take ourselves too seriously with this. Last year, you can remember we had the Brendan Bushy 175-footer against Colorado College, making the field of nominees. In a similar vein, I thought of this when I was brainstorming moment of the year, because again, thinking about things that I remember several seasons from now. One thing that I came up with was the Werner Miettinen goal, which it was. Go back to the podcast after that first Western Michigan home series this year. The goal that Cameron Rowe saved beyond the goal line, clearly beyond the goal line, and they called it no goal. So I was going to nominate it as moment of the year because it's certainly going to be one of the things that I will remember several years from now. And the rant that I went on after that. Systemic, philosophical, Todd Anderson's name was involved. It was an epic rant. I think it's...
Anytime Todd Anderson's name is involved.
I think even though it's a moment certainly that I'll remember, I think it works best in a bit sense to have it be a nominee for goal of the year. Something that was not a goal, but it was definitely a goal. 100% was a goal.
Should have been a goal.
Was across the line.
The goal that wasn't a goal.
So that is one of the goal of the year nominees as well. And I like that nomination.
I'm still on the fence about it, but I do.
You'll grow to like it.
You'll learn to like it. So,
like I said, it's probably not going to win, but I like it's similar to us sticking the knife in Bassie. Like it makes a statement with the nomination.
It's more about the message.
It exactly.
Gotcha. So perfect. So
I guess that leaves the last and the best category.
Yep, exactly. The Jeff Finger Memorial Most Valuable Player Award.
Yep.
And for here we have Dylan Anhorn, Clara Himlerova, Veeti Miettinen, and Kyler Kupka as our nominees.
So a little bit of everything. Got a couple of forwards. Got a defenseman.
We got a hybrid.
We've got a rover.
Yeah, a rover. So.
And we again debated this one. You put the women's goaltenders in here because, as I said, you put one, you got to put both.
Yep.
But then we just decided, because it's another reason that we kind of wanted to split off the goaltender of the year.
Split off the goaltenders, yeah.
Give them the nomination for that. And I think that there's no way that if you would have both nominated them for MVP, neither of them could have won that award anyway. Because there's no way to pick one or the other. It's like it's a split vote. So I like the fact that we just have these four. And as I mentioned with Himlerova, I think she's got a really good case. Leads the team in scoring. But then has to play this Swiss Army knife type role where she's taking over for defense. I think she's got the leadership kind of quotient as well, the behind the scenes leadership, intangibles that everybody loves. So I think she's got a strong case. But I would say the same thing about the three nominees from the men's side too, who are all multi-nominations with Anhorn and Veeti and Kupka also getting defense/forward of the year nominations. Again, this is a year where there's no real obvious choice for any of these categories, but especially MVP. And so I'm interested how this one's going to shake out as well. But as a whole, I think these are all, like I said, competitive categories and good to debate the merits of each of these nominees. I'm excited to see how the fan vote shakes out. And next week we're putting on our tuxes and we are having the Herbies. So find out next week who wins the big prizes. We've got some sponsors in the mix. I've got a new sponsor. I've got an old favorite and I've got a new sponsor.
Ooh, nice.
That's joined the mix. I've been really pounding the pavement here. So
good. Get those donations coming in. Get that ad revenue.
Right.
That means we need to finally write off all of this on my taxes. That's what it
and we were able to afford the Mike McMahon Substack, which we found out is quite the well of an invaluable resource.
Invaluable resources an hour and a half before everybody else.
And something called a game score, which is some sort of math equation that he configured in a lab somewhere that spits out who's best. I didn't really need a game score to tell me that Matthew Wood was a good get in the portal. But McMahon, he's got a number for you.
He's got a number for it. Mm-hmm.
So.
I forgot to mention when we were talking about the portal. Garrett Pinonemi is in the portal.
Well, St. Cloud could get him finally.
Yeah, so St. Cloud could finally get him after he left to, or he
followed Bob.
He followed Bob to Minnesota and found
to no great fanfare with the Gophers.
Yep.
So maybe he will. Maybe he will.
Maybe he will
show up.
Just kind of got a little bit of a chuckle out of that.
Maybe he comes to St. Cloud and he puts up like a 35-point year next year. Wouldn't that be poetic justice?
Yeah, right. It just pulls a Crookshank, right?
Right. And then Matthew Wood like blows his knee out in the first weekend, and he doesn't play at all for the Gophers.
So
it would be nice.
Would be nice. Jeez.
Not for Matthew Wood, but for our sake,
poetic justice.
It would kind of be fun.
It'd give me a chuckle. So anyway, that about does her.
About does her
on this episode. So yep, watch my X, Twitter, whatever feed.
Vote early, vote often.
Yep, get a video if I can find the template of the video I used last time.
Yes, and send me that video because I want to watch each of these, but in particular the Molenaar one, because this is reminding me of last year when the Ingram one was on the top of my mind for most of the year, and then I finally saw it again with the other nominees. This is good. I'm glad that you're taking the reins and being the videographer.
That's what I do.
This show
as the producer of this podcast. Yes,
producer / videographer / you're jack of all trades.
I do it all, and not a lot very well. So I just.
And now that we got someone that stepped up to do our sounders,
right?
Jason Bryant, that's one hat you don't have to wear.
Yeah, exactly. So, well, you were wearing that hat actually, so that's a hat that you don't have.
I suppose. So,
but you're getting a sponsor, so that's probably
we're all helping out here.
Yep.
This is all one big happy two-person family. Yes.
So I'm Weldie at More Clappers, MOAR More Clappers. Andrew, where can they reach you?
Andrew at greenground.net. Please note, if you are one of my followers, the official vote will be on Weldie's Twitter account. Yes. So do not submit your ballot to Green Ground because it will be returned to sender.
It will be rejected, and then we're gonna have a whole ballot counting issue, and then stop the vote. We don't want to go through that again.
We don't want a Dominion lawsuit coming down here. So send your votes into Weldie, but you can always follow me on Green Ground, and then also email me at huskieshockeypodcast@gmail.com. You can also send me an email.
Sounds good. Well, thank you everybody for listening. Until next time, go Huskies.
Woo!